The following audio recording has been designed for learning purposes only. Do not share, distribute, or provide any type of copies, or this audio lesson will not be made available to you. Good luck with today's lesson.
Fairly quickly, they were able to stay because they had a hospital right there and everything. But a lot of people were turned away, sent back, because they were either had some sort of illness or they found out the person had some sort of criminal record or whatever, and they were sent back. Okay. And that was the only way that people could come to this country, come into the country, legally was through Ellis Island. But now it's closed, it's sitting there. I know the hospital's no longer available, no longer there, it's empty. But it's a beautiful space. But that was the only way that people could legally come into the country. It was through there. Okay. All right. Voting patterns. Okay. You can look at this on your own. And I see that they're keeping stats back from the 80s all the way to 2016. And you see women, men are more likely to vote Republican. African Americans are more likely to vote Democrat. But that's changing because people are, again, with this cycle, election cycle, people are starting, African American community are starting to think, we're voting for these people, but they're not doing nothing. They have our loyalty, our vote, but nothing's really changing in terms of things that need to change. Okay. So a lot of people are thinking differently. Whites tend to vote Republican, although that's gone down over time. Percentage has gone just slightly. Latinos, there's nothing here. And like I told you, they started in 2000 to keep stats on that. And that's because by 2050, Latinos will be the majority group here. And so it pays to start keeping stats on how they vote, which party they tend to vote for, so that the candidates can kind of craft their message to fit what the needs of that group want. Okay. And you have Asian Americans also. Okay, lobbying, special interest groups. Okay, so a lot of companies pay these people. If you ever wanted a good paying job, this one is one. As a lobbyist, usually there are people who worked in government. They were senators, they were aides, and people like that. Some are lawyers, a lot are lawyers, but they end up, once they leave office, once they leave Washington, they go to work for these different corporations to advocate for whatever the corporation wants, whether it's tax savings or whether it's some sort of law that they want passed that benefits them. That's what they do. Okay, and those are special interest groups. They're just corporations. Okay, and they are able to authorize money to be given to candidates for a particular reason. They can say, well, this is for your campaign, or we'll take you on a junket to a Caribbean island, and we'll have that as a fact-finding mission, but actually it's just to relax and this is for in exchange for what you're helping us with. We'll let you do this. Okay, we'll pay for you to go to the Caribbean and relax and whatever, play golf or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, but again, they don't come out and say it, but it's basically the legislator has done something for the corporation, and in exchange they get that. Some people get money. There was this one, and I can't remember his name now. He was a black congressperson, and he had been getting money secretly from these groups, and he had like thousands of dollars hidden in his freezer at his house of money that he had gotten from these groups over time. And there are a lot of different instances where legislatures or legislators will receive monies and things like that from these groups in exchange for voting for whatever it is the company wants. Okay? So that's where the money comes from. Lots of money. Okay? So again, these jobs pay a lot of money. You know, a lot of people start at the state level, and they work like in Michigan and Lansing, lobbying for different groups, and then they move to the national level doing the same thing. But again, they make lots of money to be able to do that. So if you're ever interested in that, it's a job. Okay. So who rules the United States? There's a functionalist perspective, conflict, party. And I talked about this, so I'm going to skip over. I did go through this. I did talk about these things already. Okay. Again, when at the end of the day, the wealthy people and business groups have a major influence over U.S. policy, okay? By giving all these gifts and favors, special favors and things, the legislators will vote for, they'll change policy, they'll vote for whatever the company wants, and that leaves the rest of us who don't have the money to do that left in the wind. And I was telling you I gave the example of changes in the SNAP benefits. Again, that particular program was always tied to the Farm Bill. And nobody could mess with it, okay? Whatever happened when the Farm Bill passed, then the benefits continued, okay? But what some companies are trying to do is they're trying to separate the SNAP benefits program from the Farm Bill, and then they can destroy it. Okay? Once we get it separated from the Farm Bill, they can just get rid of it. Okay, that's been the thing that's been happening over the last, I would say since Clinton, people have been trying to do it, but they haven't been able to do it yet. So again, it'll have horrible results. And you saw that if you were looking at the news when the SNAP benefits were given, when the shutdown happened, and they gave people their benefits early. Okay, they gave you your February benefits in January. Okay, so that meant you would get nothing in February. So a lot of stores had to close, and I gave you the example of my granddaughter going to the store. She paid cash, and she stepped into the store, and the store's not open. And the manager explained to her that they had to close because they don't have the customers. So that particular store is dependent on SNAP, the people who receive SNAP benefits, to keep it going. And like I said, if they were to get rid of that program, then a lot of stores would close. The big chains, it would affect them because people use SNAP benefits at Kroger, all those big chain stores, but the smaller stores would shut down because they're totally dependent on those benefits coming in every month. Okay? So that's, again, if they were to get rid of that program, it would just be a disaster. Okay? But again, people are actively trying to get rid of it. All right. So war and terrorism, again, these are the different things that we're going to talk about a bit. Okay. War is universal. It is universal. Okay. There are people always in conflict over one another about something or other. Okay. Usually, a lot of times it usually has to do with material things, land, resources in the land. Okay. That's usually what war is always about. But it's one option for dealing with disagreements. Okay. Other people try to handle disagreements with nonviolent procedures. They might protest. Okay. You know, they may protest, silent protest, or a verbal protest over some whatever disagreement there is. Okay, and still others don't even have a name for war, but they do it because it's just within man's nature to be in conflict. Okay. Okay. You know, people always build war in this country, I do know. Can't speak for other countries about there being some honor in going to war. I have been looking, I've seen this many times, but there's a film by Ken Burns. He does all the American types of stories about different people within American society, and he did one on the Roosevelts. So it was Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Eleanor Roosevelt. Those three that were profiled. And Theodore Roosevelt was one of those, he had some issues. He thought that he should go, first he participated in the War of 1812, and then when the First World War came, he made his sons go to war, and one son was killed, and he thought, he just felt that they should go to war. He would be ashamed if, he participated in the War of Spanish-American War, I'm sorry. Thank you. It occurred to me. He participated in that war, and then when the First World War came, he made his sons go to war. One was killed at the end, and then when the Second World War came, he had already passed, but his grandsons participated in the Second World War. But he was always ashamed of his father, because his mother was a Southern woman. She participated in sending supplies she lived in the North. She participated in sending supplies down to the Confederate Army, okay? And she talked her husband into not going to war, okay? Because she didn't want anyone on the Confederate side to be killed as a result of him being there. So he didn't go to war, but Theodore Roosevelt was always ashamed that his father never went to war. Okay, he wondered why. Why didn't he do that? So he had this bloodthirst for war and whatever, and it's just that people think that there's some honor in killing, being in the war and killing. Okay. We honor the patriots. I think the only ones that people that weren't honored are people that participated in the Vietnam War. There was a lot of controversy over that. Okay. But again, we just put people on a pedestal for doing what is basically killing others for whatever reasons. Okay. yes.
I thought they were given honor because they go to war and risk their lives for their country.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah. It's always billed as that, but there's always another motive for going to war. Usually it's over something that we want or something that we feel threatened by. Okay. I would say World War II, where there was a real threat of people being annihilated by the Nazis, that was a true war, something to go to war over. Okay. But these other wars, I don't see it. You know, I don't see it. I really don't. With that war, that's the only war I could say, yes, you had a justification for going to war. Okay. But the others that we've had, no, I don't, it's always about something. So why do countries go to war? There are three conditions. One, an antagonistic situation in which two or more states confront incompatible objectives. Okay. In the Second World War, the Nazis had this one objective, which was world domination. They were going to rule for 1,000 years. That's what Hitler said. We're going to do all these things. And so it started with Europe and the Nazis going in and taking over different countries. And then once the Japanese got involved and bombed Pearl Harbor, Hitler started saying a lot of smack about the United States, and then we got into the war with, that's how we entered the war towards the end. Okay, the war had been going on for a while, and we hadn't got into it. And Roosevelt did a smart thing so that people would support it, because initially people in the United States did not want to support that war. They were like, let Europe take care of their own people, their own things, okay? And so when Roosevelt said, okay, I'm going to sit back and see what's going to happen. And then when the Pearl Harbor was bombed and Hitler started saying what he was going to do, that's how we got into that war, towards the very end. And not too long after we got in, we won the war, okay? So that's one of the things. So a culture, tradition of war, okay? And a fuel that heats the antagonistic situation to a boiling point, okay? Whatever that fuel is, okay? It could be an attack, okay? Like the attack on Pearl Harbor, that really kind of heated up everything for us to get into that war in that during World War II, for us to enter that war, okay? So some of the 7 fuels are power, unity, revenge, prestige, leader, ethnicity, and beliefs. Okay. Those are the 7 fuels that get people to go to war. Okay. Why do you think that we never really went to a full war after 9/11? Now there were troops over, and there were different skirmishes, but why do you think that we didn't have a full-out war like we did in World War II after 9/11? After we were attacked, okay, that was a justification for going to war. Why do you think that we didn't? Anybody?
There wasn't really an enemy to fight because it was a terrorist group that was from one country, that was funded by a different country, that was funded by a different country, so there really wasn't a clear enemy to fight.
That's true. That's true. No clear enemy. Even though there were people funding the people that did the attack, there were countries funding that. But we didn't want to mess with that relationship. Okay, we didn't want to mess with that. Saudi Arabia was funding the people that did the attacks on 9/11. We don't want to mess with that relationship at all. Okay, so that's why there was no full-out war. All right. So the production and distribution of war goods, propaganda of war, people kind of saying this is good, this is right, Uncle Sam wants you, that's what they used to say during World War II, to make people want to go. A lot of people after 9/11, they were talking about we need to do this, and a lot of people signed up to go into the military based on what happened during that time. And then war for profit. There's a lot of money in war, lots of money to be made. As a matter of fact, during World War II, there was a shortage of labor. There was so much work and so much money to be made because everything, all of the auto plants were turned over into making military vehicles, and everybody worked. They didn't have enough people to do all the work. Okay, so a lot of people made a lot of money during that war, and people continue to make a lot of money every time we have some sort of conflict. Somebody's making a lot of money off of that. All right. So here is the business of death, making money from killing. Okay. So again, people are selling. You got to have weapons. Okay. And you know our country, maybe other countries too, they will pay whatever it is the people are asking for the weapons. Okay. And you see some of these weapons in the neighborhoods, those type of war weapons, you see them around. Police confiscate those all the time. Okay. But again, people are making money from that. Okay, cost of war. The American Revolution, $2 million. War of 1812, I was right, 1812. I'm getting in my head. $1.5 million. Okay, and you see the most expensive war should have been. People keep saying it's the Civil War, but the most expensive war was World War II. And again, we weren't in it that long. We were in it at the end. So I'm wondering why that cost so much.
Because we built weapons for multiple countries, including A2 Red War, which was in Japan, for ships and airplanes, and also airplanes and guns and jeeps and trucks for Europe. So we had a lot of stuff going everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the most expensive war for the short period of time that we were in it. All right. Vietnam War. All right. So we get into the trillions of dollars for these different wars. Gulf War, Iraq War, yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So this is a person, this photo was taken in 1937 during a massacre known as the Rape of Nanking. And it shows how killing contests become sporting events. People are sitting around watching, taking pictures. This person's about to be beheaded. And you find that's happening over in the Middle East a lot. But when people go to war, they don't think of the enemy as a human. Okay? And so a lot of really horrible things happen during wartime. That's why you see people coming back from war, and their heads are not right because they see a lot of stuff over there. All right. And then terrorism, okay. Sometimes people turn to that to express their grievances and goals. That's what happened at 9/11, happened over in Europe regularly. You know, people are angry about something, and then they decide that they want to hurt people, you know, just innocent people. There's a man, most recently, American citizen, who was taken into custody because he was talking about he wants to kill all of the senators. I can't remember his name right now, but that's been like less than a month ago. That he's an American citizen who was in the armed forces, so he's been taught to kill. And he was saying that he had so much anger inside of him. Why the anger was inside of him, I'm not sure. But he was saying he wanted to kill. He had a whole list of people that he wanted to kill. And then he wanted to hurt just innocent people too. So when they went in, I think someone said something about it, and then the Homeland Security went in and they found all these weapons that he had. He was just ready to go, you know. But people have their attitudes. They're mad about whatever it is they're mad about, and they decide they want to hurt people, you know, whatever the reason. So they have a lot of suicide bombers. You don't see that much here, although it's probably going to grow over time, people doing that, but you don't really see as much here as you do overseas. Okay. So, and then more increasingly, you see women. Okay, she doesn't look like a person who would be a suicide terrorist. Okay, whatever she was planning, It was stopped because she ended up going to prison because she was involved in a terrorist attack in Jerusalem. But you see more and more women who are participating in those acts. And those are the people you're not really looking for. You wouldn't look for a woman or a child to be the suicide bomber. Okay, these are boy soldiers in Uganda, and usually, for the most part, they are unwilling participants. They've been kidnapped, brought to wherever it is that they get trained, and made to kill, taught to kill, made to kill. They're not willing participants in that. And a child could give consent anyway, you know, to be in something like that. All right. Okay, sowing seeds for future violence, making money from the war, business of death, and these are the top arms sellers, United States, followed by India, the top arm buyers, top arm sellers, United States, Russia, China, as you would expect those three to be able to sell. And the arms buyers are India, Saudi Arabia, okay. So people are making big money off of war. Always have, always will. All right. So, do you think that capitalism that goes globally might help in bringing more unity to the planet? There would be changes? Or do you think it'll be the same old, same old? People always have their grievances. People always want power. And that's one way of getting it, to bring conflict. What do you guys think? You know, man being man, and when I say man, you know, I include women in that group. People want power. They want to hold on to power, and so you end up having conflict. Anybody have a thought? No. Okay. And that is it. So I'm going to try to go a little bit longer today. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a few minutes, maybe till 20 after, to take a break. And then when we come back, I'm going to start the next chapter. Okay? And we'll just get into it a little bit, and then I'll let you guys go. So that at least I've started it. And then when we come back after this week, then I will finish it up. And it's on the health and medicine chapter. Okay? So I'm going to give you a break, take a break, till come back at 20 after.
Good luck with today's lesson.